This video is for level 12-8 training. In this training, we'll be discussing the role of the government. We will be looking at the arguments from both points of view. We are going to focus on the role of the government in the economy and the environment, as well as government social programs. Starting with the economy. Traditionally, the role of the federal government had been to stay out of the lives of Americans. However, the role of the government underwent a dramatic change during FDR's presidency as they battled through the Great Depression. Under Roosevelt's policies, the federal government grew substantially in size and in power. As FDR tried to end unemployment and get the nation's economy back on track, he created several federal programs and greatly expanded many existing ones. This happened under his New Deal programs. The rise of the United States as a superpower in the post-World War II era also helped to fuel the growth of the government. Most people do not object with the government when they adopt sensible rules to ensure citizens' health, safety, and security, but each regulation is a double-edged blade for many citizens. For people who support government regulation, many Americans believe that an active government regulating the economy is what is needed. They see government's role as protecting people from the greedy and excess of big businesses. Unlike businesses, the government is not motivated by profit, but by public interest. Government regulation in all parts of the U.S. economy is essential to making sure there's a level playing field for everyone. But there is a huge argument and there is a huge opposition to government regulation, as we've had capitalism in our society since we've been founded. The U.S. economy is based on a free market system. Under this system, private enterprise creates the greatest opportunity for people and the highest standard of living. It is because of our economic system that we become and have the growth engine that every nation envies. The U.S. economy creates more jobs and higher standard of living than systems burdened by excessive government regulation. And again, we have that capitalism, we have that competition-based economy where if you work really hard, it's likely that you end up doing pretty well off in life. But there's others who see that there are many big businesses who take advantage of people, and we need to have a level playing field. So it's a very diverse argument. It's very difficult, and it's not just black and white, it's really gray. Let's talk about the role in the environment. The debate on the government's role to protect the environment increased during the post-war period due to research on the effects of pesticide, pollution, and waste disposal, and concerns about conservation and global warming. Public opinion often shows a deep divide over environmental protection. Most Americans can see themselves as environmentalists. They feel the government should do more to ensure that polluters comply with environmental laws. At the same time that Americans express support for environmental protections, the public objects to the growing number of governmental regulations as they kind of become a burden on a lot of people. Only relatively recently has the federal government justified an increased level of intervention in the economy to protect the environment. Beginning in the 60s, Americans became increasingly concerned about the impact of industrial growth on the nation. Automobiles' exhaust was blamed for the appearance of smog and other forms of air pollution in cities. Many environmentalists feel that some economic growth will need to be sacrificed to protect the environment for future generations to come. There is a growing belief among Americans that protection of the environment is a government responsibility. This is based on the belief that we all need to breathe clean air and drink safe water. Only the government is able to manage these resources and prevent pollution since it has the ability to punish violators. Government decisions, however, are linked to cost involved. How much are Americans willing to sacrifice to protect their environment? When we talk about price and cost, we're talking about tax dollars. During Nixon's presidency, he signed the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA. The EPA is a program whose responsibility is to develop and enforce environmental regulations. For example, in 1972, the EPA banned the use of popular pesticide like DDT. The EPA has the power to issue sanctions and levy fines against violators of their rules. The EPA sets air and water pollution standards and engages in monitoring and enforcing its activities. New construction projects must pass through detailed environmental impact reviews before being approved. When you're going through new construction and you have to get that passed, when you have to do that environmental report, it can cost a lot of money and it can take a lot of time, which delays a lot of construction. That's an argument that many people have against it. Nixon also signs the Endangered Species Act of 1973. This law requires that Fish and Wildlife Services must add plants and animals that are threatened with extinction and then take steps to further protect them. So, to recap and summarize the issue, the environment, we all agree, is important. And we all agree that the environment needs to be taken care of. But the issue is how we're going to do that. Many Americans think that climate change is caused by high levels of carbon dioxide due to burning fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gases. They see the United States as a major contributor to the growth of global warming since it accounts for one fourth of the world's carbon dioxide emissions. They see the enactment of more environmental laws as the best way to reduce carbon emissions and save the planet. But that's not just the end answer, because again, one of the things that it says is we have to spend the money to do that. We have to take the steps and actions to do that. So the people who are opposed to it say that these new laws, they're going to increase the power of the government and they're going to cause a higher burden on citizens' lives. They also argue that the average global temperature has been changing for billions of years. It is quite natural for such changes to appear over long periods of time. Science has not shown conclusively that people can bring about permanent change to the Earth's temperature. Proposed laws to reduce emissions will do nothing to help the environment, but will only lead to significant price increases for most Americans. So, again, kind of like the economy, people believe that the environment needs some sort of help. People believe that the economy needs some sort of help. But it's not just black and white. There's a lot of gray area to the debate, to the argument. So it's important to look at both sides before you make your decisions. Lastly, let's talk about social welfare programs. For much of the 20th century, the federal government was not involved in providing social welfare assistance. During the Great Depression, the government's role changed as more citizens grew dependent on New Deal government programs. Although these programs helped many Americans, they also greatly increased federal spending. When you greatly increase federal spending, you also greatly increase taxes. The government role in social welfare program has been attracted to intense debate, especially spending related to poverty, unemployment, and national health insurance. Involvement in education has also led to increased government spending on schools and colleges. This massive spending by the federal government has raised an important issue. Is society responsible for the well being of the poor? Are the poor to be held responsible for taking care of themselves? So, when we talk about these social welfare programs and we use the word poor people, I'm not using that as a negative, but that's the easiest way to describe it. So, for people who support these government social programs, they say that many Americans believe the government has a moral responsibility to achieve equal opportunity for all. The government must act to alleviate social ills and to protect the less fortunate. Those who support such policies believe one of the roles of the government is to guarantee that no one is in need. Besides, people who receive government support are barely able to survive, or they have some sort of disability or something that enables them from working and providing for themselves or for their family. But there is a large argument against government social programs. They believe it is a personal responsibility for that individual to work hard and to make their money and to provide for themselves. They believe the role of the government is to provide people the freedom to pursue their own goals. They support the empowerment of individuals to solve their own problems. Generous government benefits are paid from the hard-earned tax dollars of those who work. So the people who are opposed to all of these government social programs, they're wondering why they have to work so hard, and they're wondering why their tax dollars go to the people who are not necessarily working. Now, I think we can all agree that everyone deserves some sort of standard of living, and that if people are struggling, it isn't a bad thing to give them help. But in any system, there are going to be people who take advantage of this. So that's where a big issue comes for those who are opposed to it. Again, just like the economy, just like the environment, social welfare programs is not just black and white. There is no right or wrong answer. It is a gray area, and it's an area that takes a lot of concentration on both sides of the argument. After World War II, the role of the government is a question that is in a lot of Americans' minds when it comes to certain issues. It is important to know the arguments for these issues because they shape the way the government works today.